What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 20 of Drizzt Done Right, the podcast all about your favorite Drow, Drizzt Do'Urden. My name is Justin, and in this episode, we'll be diving deep into chapter 20 of Homeland, titled The Foreign World, discussing all of our favorite plot points, characters, and more.
Well, if you're Justin, then that must make me Jeffrey. Yep. One of the things that we love to do each week is take a look at this chapter and how parts of it relate to the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons tabletop game that we really get a kick out of playing.
Following along with the show is easy. Just grab a copy of the book, read the next chapter, and tune in every week. But remember, we want to hear your thoughts too, so make sure to share those with us at drizztdoneright@gmail.com.
Have you finished the chapter and just wished that there was more to do until next week? Do you wish that maybe you had a way to carry the joy of this show gives you with you as you go throughout the week? Well, friends, that's what our Discord is for. Come and join the Dim Light Squad. The invitation is in the episode description. We like to talk about all kinds of things beyond the page, and we like to take a moment from time to time and dim light the people who contribute to the show. Have you ever sat back and thought, gee, it'd be cool to have my name mentioned on air? Well, all you got to do is join, click the link provided in the episode description, and come into the Discord. Justin, have you been up to anything interesting since the previous episode? I know we mentioned the growth last week, but when it happens for me, I'm still a bit stupefied. Did you get a chance to come into the Anchor and check that out?
I mean, I've been keeping an eye on it every once in a while. Why? What's new?
Well, it turns out that we had somebody in Cyprus press play, and then somebody in Mexico now also press play.
Oh, my word.
So since the last time we got on this air and talked, we've had two people in two brand new markets, countries,
Wait.
press play and listen to both of us talk on air.
Which is wild because we're actually recording this episode very early.
Yep, trying to get it in there.
Yeah, we're on a Saturday right now. This episode won't air this coming Monday, but the following. So, yeah, that happened within the past just few days. Yeah. Crazy.
No, and to me, it's always humbling, right? It's like to think that the planet is so big, the distances that we're separated are so vast. Yet when all of you take a moment to click play, then, in that instance, we're all transported together and sharing this moment. It's pretty cool, man.
It's very cool.
By the way, guys, Canada has taken the recruiting pledge pretty seriously, and they're now holding a solid 8% of our audience.
Oh, man.
Yeah, right? Like, oh, Canada. I'm not going to sing the song. I'm not going to butcher it, guys, but I just want to let you know
words, yep.
From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. You're awesome.
We see you.
Right? All right. I'm running out of air. I've gone on long enough. Now, Justin, how have you been?
I've been doing great, Jeffrey. I had 2 tests this week at work.
Excellent. Now, these are actual tests, not like, somebody came from accounting and tested your patience.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, the first one doesn't actually count. It was more like a quiz. They called it a test the whole time, and then right before they gave it to us, they were like, oh, by the way, this isn't going to count. So, just relax. And it's like, really? So, I think I got a 95% on that one, which I'm like, oh, right. Like, I missed one question.
Now you want it to count.
Exactly, right? And then the second test comes along, and I'm just like, I got 100% on that one. So I'm like, let's go.
Right? Excellent,
that first one
Excellent.
would have actually drug my grade down. So I'm like, all right, I'm fine with that. And the one thing that I did different for everyone out there, I asked questions on the second test. Like during the test, I didn't understand something, so I just put my hand up, asked a couple questions, and it helped so much. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, whether you're in school or you're taking tests at work like I am, make sure to ask questions. Like it can really help.
Look, that is a fun life moment to point out, right? And it's one that, for me, I was never a great academic student as a child. I struggled in high school.
I wasn't either.
I was I was a bit of a problem, is the best way to put it. And, it was a bit tough. So then I never thought that I was going to do well in school. But when I went in the military, the way they did schooling, they really don't give you the ability to just flake off. Like, you don't get to
Right.
just like spend your night drinking coffee and staring at the wall. You're going to do something.
Yep.
So found out when I applied myself, like it came out very well, but it was in that instance, really what it connects is you ask questions. Like, so I would ask
Yep.
stupid questions that I was afraid I was going to get made fun of in high school.
Right.
You know, you don't want to be that guy. But again, in the military, you don't get a choice. So if really my choice is you laughing at me because I asked a stupid question or me doing 100 push-ups, I'm gonna let you laugh at me because
Yep.
that hurts the next day when you can't pull your coffee mug up to your face.
Yep.
So it really did then dawn on me that it's not about stupid questions, right? It's really about asking questions to be able to get a foothold on the knowledge that you're trying to climb. You know, it's like a mountain you're trying to get up. If you don't have a foothold and you can't, put your pivots and anchors in, you're never going to get anywhere. So if you fear asking that question, well, you might as well stay at the bottom of the mountain.
Yep.
Just came up with that right out of the blue.
Man, Jeffrey, you're like, man, how do I say this? You'd make a great life coach, man.
Right? I try. Look, if any of you guys need a life coach, you go ahead and shoot that email. It's drizzdoneright@gmail.com. Me and Justin will figure out a way to set this up. We got you guys. Got you.
So I know it hasn't been that long since we last talked, Jeffrey, but how are you doing?
I'm okay. I just was propositioned to run a D&D game out here with some of the people that I work on the farm with and a couple of other friends.
Nice.
And looking forward to it. I've never run a campaign. I know we talked about for this show at the end of this first book, we want to get all of the listeners, not all of you. I need some of you to go ahead to the Discord, send in your applications. I'd like to get about maybe a dozen people to do the Grand Melee tournament. So hopefully in the coming weeks, I'll be able to start getting some dry runs in with a few friends, and we'll do some D&D campaigning. I had a friend, he lent me the books that he picked up for the campaign. So I don't know if we're going to do Rime of the Frost Maiden. I know we talked a little bit about that. But trying to come put together a little campaign for them to start and get my feet wet with what it's going to feel like to get pushback on my idea of what's going to happen, you know? Because I love to create a narrative and a story, and I can't wait to be like, and you guys go left. And they're like, but what's to the right?
Exactly.
Nothing but doom.
That's how you railroad a party there, Jeffrey.
Right?
It's like, you will die if you go that way. Go that way.
What's to the right? Well, there's a beautiful summer path laden with trees and flowers and blooming. What's to the left? Doom. Not saying you shouldn't go that way, just saying it looks perilous.
Yeah, and that's I think that's the key part there. It's I joke, like, railroading, I really try not to railroad you guys in my campaigns, but it's like it's always nice to know what you're thinking. Like, we're finishing one session, and it's just like, so what are you guys thinking for next session so that I can prepare myself, right?
Oh my gosh, as the adventurer, let me tell you, I'm always sitting there going, huh? Thinking, like, everybody's like, so where do we go next? It's like, I was hoping that would become apparent through the quest. Like,
It's like,
wait
no,
a minute.
you get to decide that.
Right? Like, in my video game, where's my NPC that comes at me with the next? Like that.
Right.
Where do I click to continue?
It's like, no, you have to decide that, Jeffrey. And as a DM, it's very difficult to come up with things on the fly. I know I've done it before, and maybe that was some of the most fun situations, but still, it's pretty stressful.
Right? Well, hopefully through traumatic shock induction therapy, just made that up, that might be something. But by dipping you into fear over and over again, like Roger Rabbit into the vat of, I can't remember what that the ooze was called.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
By dipping in and out, that eventually you'll just sit there, rinse, repeat, and rock on. Speaking of which, are you ready to rock on to the Drizzt?
I am, Jeffrey. Let's go.
As you guys have to know by now, the Drizzt is the part of the show where we're going to take a look at this week's chapter and give you the Drizzt of it. All right, are you ready for this? I feel like I'm getting ready for a sporting event after the way that you left us hanging last week, Justin.
Oh, man. I'm so excited, Jeffrey. I am so excited.
It was your excitement that really built up my anticipation to start this chapter. I'm not going to lie, because when you got excited, you were like, the surface. I was like, ooh, you get those tingles of jumping back into it.
Yeah.
So this chapter starts off, and we find ourselves with 14 members of a patrol group that are making their way toward the surface.
The surface.
Justin, how excited were you feeling for this? Seriously, I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit But the anticipation, walk me through it. When you first got to turn the electronical page.
Right. So, yeah, as you know, in the last episode, my dim light was the fact that they are going to the surface. Here in this chapter, here they are. They're going to the surface. Jeffrey, I was so excited. And, I mean, like, of course, I remembered, excuse me, that was one of those things where it was like, I remembered this part. This is probably the most iconic part of the book for me.
Yep.
This is the one part that I was not forgetting. All these other small details, even though they might not be totally small, they kind of got lost to me. Like, that, it wasn't as memorable to me. So I was so excited for this. And, I mean, knowing that the fact that they were going to the surface last chapter was my dim light. Of course, the fact that they went to the surface was pretty much my dim light for this week as well.
Oh no, I absolutely expected it to be. Like when I sat down to start putting the Drizzt together, I was like, oh, I want to tee it up right at the beginning because like you were so like a kid looking for chocolate, you know, like ooh, is that chocolate?
Right,
we're going
there.
to grandma's. She's got the Werther's originals. They're in the candy dish. Love it. So, and I think I talk about this later on. If I don't, I'm going to try to bring it up. And I really love the idea of going back into this chapter, having read it a few times, because you do get a different perspective. You know what happens, but you're built up with that anticipation of, man, this is the water park, and we're going on the big ride. We're not doing we're not doing the wading pool. This isn't the little kiddie side. No, we're going on the log drop. So we see this patrol moving through the Underdark with this like liquid grace, like a pack of wild animals on the move, silent in their magical boots, hidden behind their pawafis. They crossed boundaries without a care, for few creatures in the Underdark were willing to purposely intercept a Drow raiding party. Mm-hmm. The surroundings changed. The air contained less sulfur and more moisture. The oppressive rocks weighing overhead suddenly seemed as if they might fly away at any moment. They could feel their ascent as they went. The wind brought with it a seductive sense of flowers in bloom, grass, and budding trees.
And sorry, I need to interject here. Do Drow have... what's the word I'm looking for? Are you going to ask
me if they have allergies? Because
allergies?
That's brilliant. I didn't consider it until you paused me, and I was like, wait a minute.
I was going to say asthma, and I was like, that's not the word I'm looking for. Allergies. Just like, imagine.
Here they come for the raiding party, and their stealth is ruined by the sniffles in their red eyes.
Because, I mean, it's while we're recording here.
Drow 7 over there has a case of the pink eye. He's got to stay home today.
So, while we're recording here, it is springtime now, and I know a lot of my coworkers have pretty severe allergies going on. So that was one of my first thoughts going through this. I'm just like, could you imagine if like they're making their way up through these halls here, these corridors, and all of a sudden the one's just like, poof, like just their eyes get all puffy and sneezing and giving away their position and everything.
Total War of the Worlds moment where the bacteria assaults them and they're done.
Right. Sorry.
Drizzt took a moment to remind himself that the place they marched toward was wholly evil and dangerous. In fact, maybe the scents were part of the trap.
Yeah, allergies.
Right? Boom. I guess maybe he thought that it was like when me or you go to the grocery store and you can smell the fresh baked bread. Surely it's a diabolical plan to assault our waistline with carbs, right?
It's just enticing. It just draws you there and you buy up all the bread.
Yeah, that's why they pump it through the vents into the front of the store so that it entices your hunger, because you should never shop for groceries when you're hungry. Oh. In a scene that really captivates the imagination, this cleric from Iraq Tinilith is walking around, pressing her face up against every crack that she comes to, until suddenly she senses something. Having cast a spell of seeing, it allows her to know that it's light on the surface. The sun is up. They'll have to wait. They made camp, and about a half a cycle of Narbondale goes by. When the sun had fallen, the cleric used magic to shrink them and send them through the crack. She wished them good hunting as she would remain behind, but she was quick to point out that the Spider Queen would be watching. Talk about nightmare fuel. Could you imagine walking through the woods one dark night and a hunting patrol of Drow show up through a crack in the ground?
Yeah, that's terrifying.
What does the word safety even mean at that point?
Yeah, Yeah, and like they're completely unarmed. They're probably going through some kind of like surface elf festival or something. They have all their parties, you know.
I don't
And
think. Oh no, they're not. The Drow aren't unarmed.
well, I just mean no. I mean the surface elves are unarmed.
Oh, okay,
They're not
right.
expecting this at all, and all of a
No.
sudden, like something like that was just like popping out. Like
Yeah, like I can just imagine if you were in the woods seeking refuge because it's a rainy day, right?
Right.
Like I need a cave because I can have the wall up against me behind me. I'll start a fire. I gotta go watch one entrance, and then through the small crack in the cave behind you, out pops a drow. Like
yeah.
there goes your entire day, ruined.
Yep. Yeah.
They made their way to the surface, and Drizzt experienced life without a ceiling for the first time. He felt himself drawn to look towards the heavens. The twinkling starlight lifted his heart, and he didn't even notice the singing that rode in on the wind. So fitting, it seemed, to him in this moment. Drizzt looked around at his companions and immediately realized that things were wrong. This place didn't strike him as evil at all. Despite the teachings of Hatchet, Drizzt understood serenity and realized that the drow around him were filled with anxiety. The one question that rose in Drizzt's mind was, were his feelings of comfort here weakness or truth of heart? Deenan walks up and completely misreads the moment. He thinks Drizzt feels some sort of apprehension about the surface, and he reassures him that the trees are a lot like the mushroom grove back home, not sentient nor harmful.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Like there's his big brother having a big brother moment. Like, hey, don't worry. Those trees just like the mushrooms. It's okay. They're not going to hurt you.
Right. But just like the first time you ever see a tree, like.
Well, to a drow, you would think it's beautiful, right? Because you have the mushrooms are well-rounded underneath, right? But it's the sharp, angular look and the weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Because to
yeah.
them, it must be very obscure and angular, I would think. You know, because like evergreen trees and such.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel like it was like spider limbs with the the weird angulars. It would be more of something that they look at and go, oh, cool. Maybe not so much like a flowering dogwood tree, but evergreen thick forests.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. No, I totally get that.
I'm probably horribly wrong, but it's a particular The party's nerves were wound so tight that a squirrel bounced across the land and all of a sudden was cause for them to jump and almost draw their weapons.
That's pretty funny.
Right, because in a cartoon or a movie, right, that would play wonderfully as this little squirrel goes, just bounces across and they're all like, shink, out comes all the swords, 3 crossbows already let loose, like, it's it's a replay of the fall of House Tekkentui, but it's just a squirrel against 14 drow. His AC is not high enough to get through that battle. If he doesn't have Misty Step, he is in trouble. Poor squirrel. With Stealth and Deenan's guidance, they soon located the source of the singing. It was a group of surface elves gathered around a fire. The elves were among the hardest races to sneak up upon, but these were the drow. Drizzt was so captivated by the song that he almost missed Deenan signaling the attack. As bowstrings snapped out a deadly melody, they brought silence to the song and rage to Drizzt's heart as this beautiful moment was shattered. Deenan and the drow fell in among the elves with savagery. They had a lust for vengeance. The scene played out before Drizzt in a slow horror. Deenan removed a female elf's head, and a small girl elf cried out as her mother fell lifeless to the ground. Deenan punched the air and reveled in what it was to be drow. This victory for Lolth was a butchering. Drizzt reared back in surprise as the child neared him, staggering toward her mother. Deenan's exuberance almost carried Drizzt's hand to strike, steal the life from her eyes. Instead, in a bit of theater, he mimicked a blow and shoved her to the ground, smearing blood from her mother on her to camouflage her. Told her to stay down. Deenan touted their victory, celebrating his brother's attack. He began to throw his praise about as a drow came forward to correct the kill count and claim the dead mother as his own. In the blink of an eye, Drizzt lashed out. He lashed out at the injustice of this moment, the horror of the raid. He lashed out against all the things that were not right. He lashed out against the boastful drow before he realized it and laid him out on the ground, blood on the handle of his scimitar that he used to bash the drow. Deenan paused, unsure what was going on. Drizzt had to think quickly on his feet, so he threatened the down drow to never steal a kill from him again, and Deenan positively beamed at his younger brother. Deenan then turned to inform them that there was one last duty. My mistake. It's the cleric that tells him that it's Dinan.
Right.
They gotta
Yeah.
go. But cleric tells him there's one last duty. The matrons of Menzo Berenzin have bid them to witness the ultimate horror of the surface world, that they may warn their kin. The first rays of sunrise begin to rise over the horizon, glaringly evident to the subterranean dwelling Drow. The sight made them uncomfortable, but to Drizzt it was a thing of beauty. Dinan and the cleric both shot looks at Drizzt. The cleric demanded that they put their magical items in the cave mouth so that they wouldn't be affected by the sunlight. I found that really cool because I never really thought about sunlight damaging magical items at all, let alone ones created underneath. You know what I mean? Like, or underneath in the Underdark. But I guess maybe it's a deterioration of the magic ability, right?
I have no idea. I never thought about that before. I mean, maybe that's just a superstition.
I was just gonna say maybe it's completely made up because they're like, the scorching rays of the sun may melt. But I was just wondering, like, that's not a known thing. Maybe that's a trope. Maybe that's folklore, urban legend, or maybe it's true.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay. The small rays grew to full-blown sunrise, and the clerk bid them to return to their homeland. But Drizzt questioned it in an offhand. Mm-hmm. The cleric saw him as a confused male and cried out, "Menzo Berenzin!" Drizzt soaked up every bit of that sunrise he could before eventually having to make his way back into the Underdark toward a deepening gloom.
I mean, that's where the book got its title, I'm sure, Homeland.
Yeah.
But that use of that where it was just like, well, time to go back to our homeland, and Drizzt was like, Homeland?
Right. He's like, is that is that the name of the book? No, I absolutely agree. And sometimes it's for me, like, I don't claim to be a master of the English language in any form whatsoever.
No.
However, when you hear things that are spoken in a proper manner, sometimes it really does change how you hear it, to me at least. So, like, quick sidetrack. I watched a Netflix thing about the Unabomber, one of those, like, fictionalized true shows, right? So it's not a documentary, but it's an entertaining show. And they talk about one of the things that they picked up in the verbal language was that everybody says you can't have your cake and eat it too. Except for the Unabomber, who said you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Oh, interesting.
Or, can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't eat your cake and have it too. So he flips it around. So everybody says, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, well, that you can't eat your cake without having it.
Right. But then you can't have your cake.
You cannot, you cannot eat your cake and have it. So the way he would say it is technically correct, but nobody says it that way. So when they were combing through the language and his brother would hear the manifesto and read through the stuff, he's like, I know somebody who talks just like that. Wait a minute, hold on. And it's just the correct usage of verbiage just totally rings out like a bell sometimes. So hearing homeland instead of home.
Yeah.
It's just such a thing that kind of drove it home to me because I'm so used to hearing like, all right, man, let's go home. But the cleric was like, well, we will now return to our homeland. And then Drizzt could turn around and like, homeland. It just has a different gravitas in that moment. I love it.
Definitely. Cool.
So that's about the end of the Drizzt of it, buddy. Why don't you go ahead and swing it around? Where are we going to go now?
Let's take them on into the dim light reel. All right, the dim light reel is where we cast darkness on our favorite parts of the chapter and dim light all of our favorite characters, events, descriptions, and more. Jeffrey, I wanted to have like 5 dim lights this week.
Go ahead, I got it. You do all 5. I'm going to take a nap.
So I will say, you shouldn't nap, or else I'm not going to have anyone to talk to.
Not just that. How am I ever going to press stop? It's just like, what am I on a random bus stop, and I'm going to hopefully get off at the right? No, it's never going to work. It's never going to work.
So my runner-up is the reactions to the surface world, because we had some very interesting reactions from Drizzt as well as the other Drow. The whole time, like you mentioned in the Drizzt that Drizzt was drawn to the stars. He loved, he was not scared of them. He heard stories of them and how horrible they were and everything. But then he saw them and he was just like, no, these things are beautiful. And he couldn't stop from looking above and everything. And I'm just like, And there were a number of things like that along the way.
When it's one of those things that make you wonder, I mean, obviously he was raised different than most Drow. He had Zach Nefane in his life, somebody who actually fought for male Drow to have value, right? Most just kind of kicked to the curb. But why does not every Drow look to the sky, see the stars, and be filled with hope and wonder? If he is able to be filled, and they're all similar, and it's nature versus nurture, right? We always go back to that fun little psychological poking. Why are they all freaked out, but he's like,
wow.
I guess it speaks to just how close it is between like fear and infatuation. You know what I mean? Some people find fear to be exciting, and some people, well, they just find it to be fear.
Yeah. So that was definitely a runner-up for me, but my dim light this week is going to have to be Drizzt saving the child surface elf. So during the raid, there was a moment where Drizzt is at a crossroads, and that moment is the single character-defining moment. I don't know if you recognized it as much as I did, but it was just like, here is that moment where Drizzt could or would become a full-fledged Drow, or he would deny all of Drow society, and be committed to living a life apart from them. It was in that, that you know what I mean? And
I do, and like I want to jump in and make parallels between Drizzt and Zach, but I don't want to jump in and stomp all over your notes because I didn't get through them all. So go ahead, rock it out.
So Drizzt is standing face to face with this surface elf child who is mourning the death of her mother. Drizzt's scimitar is set high in the night sky, waiting to strike down on this child, thinking that it would be a mercy to kill this child, so that this child doesn't have to live with this pain anymore. And then Dinan is watching Drizzt's actions from afar, yelling, "Yes, my brother! Today you know the glory it is to be a Drow!" punching his victorious fist in the air, which, if you're watching us on Spotify, if you take a look at our logo, it's very similar to the AI-generated artwork that I'm using for the podcast.
Taking over the world.
Which just made me think, Jeffrey. I don't remember what I told the AI program to like draw to make a painting of, right?
Right.
But here we have a fist punch. Like, did the AI know that fist punch was going to be such a defining moment for Drizzt?
I mean, evidently the AI has already learned that Drow are vicious and mean. Jeepers.
So I'm just like, what did the AI? How smart is the AI at this point? And is it actually AI? I don't know. Anyway, in that moment, Drizzt's life is flashing before his eyes. It's not described as that way, but I can only imagine that that's happening, right? Yep. All of Zach's and Hatchnet's lessons that Drizzt, like, they're just like rushing through Drizzt's head in this moment. Both of them taught Drizzt what it means to be a Drow. Both of them did that. Different perspectives, but they both did that. And Drizzt is then just weighing the consequences of his future actions in that moment. And
it's like he knows he's on this like little teeter-totter. You know, what are they called? Seesaw.
A seesaw, yeah.
You know, he's like a little go this way and it tips that way. A little go this way and it tips that way.
Well, and that's the defining moment that we find Drizzt at this moment. I mean, I think anyway.
And just this is pure speculation. I have not just critically reviewed the entire book to break it down, but this is the first time that he would have taken innocent life willingly, right? Like Yuck Yuck, shout out Yuck Yuck. He was an unsuspecting innocent death.
Correct.
But this would be the moment Matron Malice flat out salivated over earlier, trying to get him to wet his blades with innocent blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's chilling.
Yeah. So time just seems to freeze at that moment, and it did for me. Like, I had to stop reading just for a moment to let that moment just kind of sink in for me.
That's where you know it's a great author. Like, the fact that he makes you pause real life to take a pause in the book to be like, ooh, I got a little tingle. Like,
Now, I'm not saying that I put the book down and I went and I cleaned the kitchen or anything like
no,
that.
no,
I sat there and I was just like reflecting on everything.
Yeah,
just kind
like
of thinking
that moment
about
happened to you. Like in the book, you get this moment where he's having a flashback, and then you, in your mind, is suddenly having a Inception over and over.
And this is, again, probably my 5th time through the book, and still it was that impactful on me. So the child glances up at Drizzt at the last possible moment, and Drizzt catches his reflection in her eyes. And it was then that Drizzt realized that the surface elves weren't the monsters in this story. The Drow were.
Yep, turns out everyone's right. Drow are evil.
And so Drizzt feigns a killing blow, forcing the child to the ground face down. Once Dinan looks away, Drizzt covers up the scene with blood from the child's own mother, and along with some quick slashes to the clothing on her back. Then knowing that she didn't speak the dialect that Drizzt spoke, he calmly whispers to her, just stay down. And
How does he know that they don't speak the same? I mean, they're both Elvish, right?
Well, there was a moment before when the child was running to her mother.
Okay.
He heard her yelling, but didn't
understand.
understand what she was saying.
My fault.
And
yep.
So that was laid out in the chapter there. But so even though he knows that she can't understand him, he still says that. He still says, stay down. And it seems that she understands through at least his tone. So after the battle, the Drow then gather around the battlefield right on top of this living surface elf child. There, Dinan tries to honor Drizzt by announcing that Drizzt killed 2 surface elves, when another Drow chimes in and says, 1 kill! And Drizzt's heart sinks, because he thinks that this other Drow recognized that Drizzt did not kill the child, and Drizzt is like, he's ready, like, he's this close, Jeffrey. He's ready to go out there and just slaughter as many as he can before he gets cut down.
Now, this is one part where I kind of questioned a little bit of the continuity, because when that guy comes in and says 1 kill, and Drizzt's like, man, I'm going to have to fight everybody here. So be it. Let's do this. Who else did Drizzt think that he thought that he killed? You know what I'm saying? Like, if he got credit for 1 kill, he would have then killed the child. That would have been his 1 kill.
Well, but I think the idea was Drizzt thought that this guy thought that Drizzt did not kill the child, but I think Dinan thought that Drizzt killed the mother.
Yeah, because the guy who was claiming the kill was the one that took the mother's head off. That's why
right, exactly. Yeah.
That's why it kind of confused me, because when he says 1, Drizzt is automatically on guard. The only thing I could think is that maybe it's also the fact that if this guy's saying 1, then he is seeing that this guy knows the truth of the battlefield. So he knows he killed the mother. Well, maybe he saw Drizzt, and Drizzt didn't kill her either. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only thing I could think Drizzt was thinking, because if the guy says 1, then that's kind of just backing up Drizzt's story. Like, yeah, 1 right here, this one killed it.
No, I think Dinan thought that Drizzt killed the mother.
Okay.
Is what happened, because then the guy came in and said, "No, I killed the mother," but then Drizzt is just like,
so he's on guard. Like, look, if this goes down and people keep investigating, then we're going.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so at that moment, Drizzt has to. Well, I think what happens then is basically the child starts whimpering, and he's just like, "Oh shoot, I got to get all these Drow away from this child so that they don't catch that this child is alive, right?" And so what he does is he takes credit for killing that child's mom, and the way he does it is brilliant. He gets really, he gets just enraged, and he lets his emotions from this whole situation kind of take control of him, and he just kind of like tweaks it a little bit, and he's just like, if you ever steal a kill from me again, I will replace the head lost from its shoulders with your own. And it's like, whoo, like.
So in that moment, what he's doing is intimidating. So he's not saying that the guy stole the kill from him by saying it's my 2 is now 1. He's saying that if you ever kill that lady before I get a chance to kill her,
right,
then you're dead. Like,
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So he was playing it as if he was about to kill that Drow.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway,
That poor Drow is just, I mean, could you imagine being that guy, though? It's just you're a random dude selected for a wonderful time on the surface of butchering and slaughtering and, getting the glory of Lolth. And you do your job. I mean, you whack down a surface elf, that evil, vile creature, doesn't need his head, cast it over there. Ha ha! And then your glorious triumph, Drizzt turns around and threatens you. The guy that you've just watched win like 57 melee Magthier tournaments in a row,
Like,
even though there's
on
only
his
10.
List.
Yep. That guy turns around and grabs you up by the collar, and it's like, what happened to good job? You know what I mean? Like, he's just being a Drow, doing a great time, being like employee of the month, got his little picture in the corner, little elf surface kill counter on the side, and then Drizzt is just like, I will break you if you ever come near me again. And it's like, oh, that guy's day is ruined. Like, he's now never going to be able to go into the locker room of the Drow again with any kind of dignity and pride. Those guys are all going to make fun of him.
Yeah, probably. So that scene, Jeffrey, was just so amazing to me. In fact, like typing up my notes here, I was honestly like tearing up while
I can see that.
Not so much while reading it, but while typing it up, and while you were reading it too, and the Drizzt, I was just like, oh shoot, I can't cry on screen.
I do go for the emotional, emotional hammer from time to time.
So, I mean, just an amazing scene, a brutal scene, terrifyingly brutal, but just great. And so, like, finally, Drizzt is 100% on board with the Drow being truly evil, and I'm just excited to see where this goes at this point.
Yeah, like, that was the last shred of his naivety, right?
Yeah, like, now he knows. Now he knows, like, just...
Because he was holding out, like, maybe the surface elves are truly evil, maybe I've just misunderstood this, maybe I've just been, like, a big old emo Drow my entire life, and, you know what, I got to get over it. And now he goes to the surface, and all it does is reconfirm, no, they suck.
Yeah.
All these people that look like me, I kill all of them. And that's where, like, the comparison to Zaknafein really jumps out in my mind, is because Zaknafein tilted the other way in that moment. Like, he put on the guise of being a Drow. So in that moment, Zaknafein would have killed the child because it's the right thing to do. He can't risk his life. He's surrounded by other people. There's no way to cover it up because if that child makes noise, just like she did with Drizzt, Drizzt was ready to fight all of them.
Yep.
Zaknafein would have known that he would have had to fight them all, and then made the smart, logical decision of this one life buys me access, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
To get to where he was in life as a weapons master, he went the other way.
Yeah.
But I firmly believe that if you were to look at Zaknafein at age, 34, whatever Drizzt is right now, he would have had that same moment. You know, he would have had the same conflict inside of, man, these people around me are monsters. But he doesn't see a way out. Drizzt just doesn't care. He's like, if there's no way out, so be it. Then I'm, flotsam on the storm of eternity, cast me out and let me go.
And you wonder at that point, like, okay, well, Drizzt now has not killed this child because he believes that the Drow are evil. Oh, man. Why is he going back down there? Why doesn't he make a break for it?
Let's keep this in the context of when we saw full-blown Drow justice for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It was the fact that House Devere, during a raid, used the magic of Lolth in order to allow the gnome to kill a Drow.
That's right.
So Drizzt, using this raiding party, has now allowed a surface elf to live. Now, if this surface elf was evil, as they say, in this horrible spirit or whatever, then maybe 30 years down the road, they come back and enact vengeance, and Drow will then die at the hand of that elf. And so this would possibly bring displeasure and disfavor on the House of Lolth. This is no small action to simply just not be a member of the Butcher Party. This is this clear stance and like both barrels of the middle finger towards Lolth and what she stands for. In essence, because it's like, not only will I not kill the Drow, like the elf, like I will thumb my nose at you. I just can't, not buy in at all. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Like this chapter, I think by far, maybe I say this, I don't know, every chapter, is the most impactful. You're right. When I come back to read it, I always remember to me, it's that moment where she looks at Drizzt and her eyes lock.
Exactly. Yep.
And they don't understand each other. They're always thinking like foreign combatants on a battlefield or whatever. Like, how would you continue to like talk?
Right.
You imagine him putting a reassuring hand on her back, and he's talking. She can't understand it, but the motion is, for you on YouTube. Let me pine to the camera is stay down, and
Right.
you'll intrinsically understand that at some base level. Is just don't move. You know what I mean? Like to lay there. Like even if you just don't want to get hurt by the weird butchering elf that just showed up through a crack in the wall.
Yeah.
You're gonna stay still, and it's like that's what locks me back into the story when I think about it. It's Guinevere, him meeting her, and it's this moment where he goes to the surface for the first time and finds out his whole life is a lie.
Yeah.
Like it's so with all that emotion being thrown out there, I guess the fitting thing would then be to jump into my part of the dim light, and that's gonna be
Yep.
Drizzt watches a sunrise.
That sounds so beautiful.
Right.
So beautiful and relaxing and
So I wanted to take a moment and dim light the sunlight. Yeah. Somehow I feel like that line works. I decided to dim light Drizzt watching a sunrise.
there you go.
So when we were introduced to Hatchnet, he gave that wonderful speech about the horrible sun that rose in the sky to punish those that walked the surface with its wicked rays. And there's this ominous moment after the battle where Dinan is simply glowing at the triumph of the victory in Lulth. The patrol is reveling in a job well done, and they reach the entrance to the caves. The cleric pauses and lets them know that they have one last job before they can return home. The matrons of Menzoberranzan bid them to witness the ultimate horror of the surface world so that they may warn their kindred. In my head, I see them all just kind of like milling around, unsure of what's about to come next.
Right.
Maybe just nervously shifting their feet a little bit until Dinan cries out, "There!" and points to the eastern horizon. Just the tiniest shading of light limned the dark outline of distant mountains. Salvatore writes that a surface dweller would not even have noticed it, but the dark elves saw it clearly, and all of them, even Drizzt, recoiled instinctively. And for me, right here, I couldn't get the image of a cat out of my head. Where they get real close to something and they're investigating it, and they'll sniff around it. Maybe they try to rub up against it a little bit. But the first time something happens or changes, and the cat just springs back away. Right, so it just recoils.
Right.
That's how I imagine them all just kind of like looking. Oh, sunlight. You know what I mean? Just jumping back from it. And Drizzt
Not
takes
so much
a moment.
Drizzt though, right?
Well, he recoils instinctively. They don't jump, but it's that flinch. So even he
I guess,
flinches
yeah.
because for the first time you're seeing, in awe and wonder, this magnificence, whether it's beautiful or chaotic, right?
True.
This magnificence before you unfolding. And Drizzt takes a moment and says, "It is beautiful."
Out loud?
Oh, out loud, yeah. And this causes Dinan to throw an icy stare at him from the side, but that's nothing compared to the cleric, who also caught Drizzt saying that, who throws an even icier stare.
Oh boy.
And tells everybody, put your armor and equipment within the shadows of the cave so that you will not be affected by the sunlight. She commands them to watch. Drizzt did so willingly. The eastern sky assumed a hue of purplish pink, then pink altogether. Its brightening causing the dark elves to squint uncomfortably. They spent their whole existence to this point underground, at least the younger Drow, and the only way they've had to pass the time, or to judge the passing of time, is the glow of Narbindel. Until now. Now, the spectacle that's playing out before them is enough to make Narbindel seem like a fizzled-out firework in comparison.
Yeah.
Drizzt wanted to deny the event, to put it into the same pile of anger that denied the Master of Lore's words concerning the surface elves. This is interesting because the sight is terrifying to the Drow, except to Drizzt, it's transformative. He was told that the surface elves are evil and filled with hate by Hatchnet and the Academy. But instead of finding a way to connect with his brethren against the evil fairies, he found himself transfixed. The songs were beautiful. The surface elves did not seem evil. The sunrise was amazing.
It was amazing. And I mean, it sounds like a very beautiful sunrise.
Yeah.
Like you said, purples, pinks, the mountains off in the distance. It's just,
And
it sounds beautiful.
The way he's layering it, and I'll hit
Yeah.
that up again at the end, is it's gorgeous. And then he goes on to say, then it happened. Like all this other stuff is just the lead up, and he goes, then it happened.
Yep. Yeah.
The top rim of the sun crested the eastern horizon. The surface world awakened to its warmth, its life-giving energy. That is such contrast to how the Drow see it. I love this.
Right. Well, yeah, you wouldn't, I mean, they wouldn't be used to the warmth from something that big, right? Something that magnificent. And so what would that feel like to them? Does that feel like they're physically burning?
I ask the same question in mere moments. Those same rays that assaulted the Drows, those same rays assaulted the Drow elves' eyes with the fury of fire, tearing into orbs unaccustomed to such sights. Watch, cried the cleric. Witness the depth of the horror. The party held out until one by one they cried out in pain and fell into the cave's darkness, till only Drizzt stood beside the cleric in the growing daylight. Drizzt felt the same pain as his kin, but he basked in it. He accepted it as his purgatory, exposing him for all to view while its stinging fires cleansed his soul. I have to stop right there because putting this together and doing my notes, that part gave me chills. Like to have someone describe a sunrise in such a way is literally amazing. It just kind of hit me differently. Like if you've ever sat awake throughout the night and watched as the horizon, as it turns, then you know what they're going through. The reality of the moment is far less than fear. It's far less than the fear that they've been stoked into. But in that moment, their fear is real because they don't know any better. Their reality's been crafted by Menzo Berensson. The warmth that you feel when the sun begins to turn the sky, to them, that must have been more like a little unsettling because this giant ball of flame is already starting to warm them, and it's barely shown itself. It's really easy to imagine how they could have thought that a few more hours of this sun rising, the heat must become unbearable. It's like knowing that the oven door has just been trapped and you're on the wrong side. Like, oh, no. The cleric turned to him, told him it was time to leave. They have borne witness, and now they may return home. But Drizzt questioned her word. I stumbled over that a little bit because I said home again instead of saying homeland like they said. Yep. So they said it was time to return to Homeland. But Drizzt questioned her word, and the cleric cried out, "To Menzo Berensson." She thought he was a male, confused beyond reason, and said, "Come, before the inferno burns the skin from your bones. Let our surface cousins suffer the flames, a fitting punishment for their evil hearts." Wow. You go from a moment that touches the soul of Drizzt to then also seeing it through the eyes of this vile creature, this cleric of Lolth who is just dripping with hate for the scene that unfolds around them. As much as Drizzt sees only the love, she sees only the hate.
Yeah.
And it's that viewpoint, seeing that sunrise with the layering and the dichotomy of like, he sees it as gorgeous. They see it as, and man, it's just such a beautiful moment. Like it's not just a sunrise. It's so much more. But at the end of the day, it's just a sunrise. Every sunrise is that exceptional.
But then another thing that crossed my mind just now, and it makes it more of a comical scene. What if one of the reasons why they are so terrified of this thing is because they keep trying to stare at it? Because they don't know any better. They've never seen it before.
Like a moth to a flame just going towards the bug zapper. Like, ooh.
I mean, like, when you were reading it, it's just like that crossed my mind. And it's like the cleric says, "Watch!" And it's like, and they're like, they keep falling off like, okay, no, I'm going back to the cave. Is it because they are like staring at it and it's just like, oh!
Poor Drow don't have a good science department and never made the correlation that after the age of 400 they suddenly began losing losing eyesight due to the ultraviolet radiation.
And so like maybe Drizzt just figured out like just close your eyes and just bask in the sunlight and it's a lot more pleasant that way.
Right? He went and got himself some Drow shades, put on the Drow SPF 900.
All right. Awesome.
He's out there with a little drink in his hand with an umbrella looking over at the cleric like, what are you talking about? Having a great time.
I'm ready to stay up here indefinitely.
You know what? I'd like the annual pass. Thank you. Mark that up.
Oh, man. All right. Awesome dim lights this week, Jeffrey. Let's take them on down into the dungeon now. I mean,
Delve into the dungeon!
quite literally, right? They're heading right back down into the Underdark.
Yep, right back to where they came from.
Let's join them. The Dungeon Delve, that's the part of the show where we link this chapter to our favorite tabletop RPG. This week, I wanted to highlight the orb. The orb that was used to allow the Drow to squeeze through this crack, right? So yeah, in this chapter we saw a magical item being used to help Drizzt and the rest of the raiding party pass through this small crack in a wall so that they can reach the surface world.
For those of you wondering how Santa gets into the houses without a chimney, pay close attention to what Justin's about to say.
This orb essentially turned the target from a three-dimensional creature into a two-dimensional creature, almost like a shadow. So I love magical items that can do weird things, just like this one. It usually results in the party using them in very creative ways. So I wanted to delve into this orb a little bit. So I went on to Forgotten Realms fandom, their website, and I found that at least one person gave this specific orb, a name. The Orb of Duo Dimension.
Now, if we had an unlimited budget and we had these cool little sounders and headers that we could play, right? That would be where you say, what is that? The Orb of Duo Dimension.
Whoa. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Get that echo going on.
Just as long as we're both on board with where the creative process would go. But it's not going to go there. Go ahead. You're up. Let's run.
So the orb was described as having holes all over its surface, except where the caster was holding. So it's essentially like a bowling ball. You know, you got those holes, right?
Yep.
Except the holes are all over it. So these holes are then covered with some sort of magical door that relaxes open when the command word is spoken. Which I thought was interesting. And
every little hole in this thing is a doorway to somewhere, and by using the magic, it just like rotates and pop, there it is.
And opens up a different door. Right.
Excellent.
And well, what's like interesting about this is apparently the inside of the orb, what's inside that makes it so magical is there are the ashes of a drow inside.
Is this like a religious item? Would that make it a what is that called? Not a reliquary. When they have the bone of a saint.
Oh, I don't know. I know what you mean, but I don't know. I don't remember the name of it.
For those listeners of ours who aren't Catholic, I'm sorry. I don't know what the term is to tell you. And for those that are, you can send me an email. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, I was going to say the ashes of the drow. Does it have some sort of like religious connotation? You know what I mean? Like some not sacrilegious, some sacred. Or is it just regular drow? Like walking down the street, you see the drow over there. He's having a sick day, and you're just like, nope, Gavin, I need him in my my orb thing.
Yeah, well, it could be. It could totally be like, we need more. Just kill that one. It's a male, whatever. Like, so the description goes on to say that if you shake the contents onto the target, so you say the command word, it opens up, and then you shake the contents onto the target, then they become affected by the duo dimension spell.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so I was like, okay, the duo dimension spell. What is that? And I took a look in the official D&D texts that I own. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I took a look online, and I saw that there were a couple locations where the spell was homebrewed, and so I used that to make my own stat block for this orb, which I will be posting on the Discord. Which reminds me, I think we actually have a couple things we need to post, but we'll get that.
Fun little side note as we sidetrack to that. If you have to then dump the ashes on the drow, right?
Yeah, you pepper them on there. Yeah.
Would the allergies that suddenly affected the Drow make it harder to put the ashes on them as they're sneezing and coughing? Like, could you be dumping the
blow them
ashes,
away?
Yep, the only ashes you've got to create this doorway. And it's like, there goes all... Frankie is now all over the floor, guys.
You know, I just watched... rewatched The Big Lebowski last weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
Yes, I have, several times.
They spread the ashes and it blows all over them.
He just throws it in the air, and it was the one guy behind him because their friend.
Yeah.
So he dumps the ashes. He's like, "Hey, we love you, Donnie," and it just whap right
blows
in the face
right of Lebowski.
And that's the breaking point. Everything else he goes through in the movie was fine. That's the breaking point. If only he knew that he was about to travel through a 2-dimensional crack in the wall. Turns out Walter was a wizard.
He would have just been blown away with the wind as well.
Side note, quick research on the fly. It's a reliquary.
A reliquary.
It's where you get the term relic from.
Okay. No, I mean, I would have said relic, but...
I didn't think... I thought there was like a fancy name for it, but evidently
reliquary.
Relic is how you say reliquary. Yeah.
Okay, all right. No, I mean, I'm sure I knew that at one point, but... yeah, so I went ahead and I put together a stat block, which basically goes through what I just talked about. You know, I gave it a casting time of 1 action. It has a range. The range is basically just touch. The duration is 1 minute. One thing that I realized I forgot. Maybe I'll have to go back and fix this. I said that it's a jet black orb. It's covered with 20 holes, is what I said. Whether that means that it's the ashes of 1 drow inside, and there are just 20 holes accessing it, or if it's 20 holes that are individual, and it's 20 drow ashes in there. But anyway, it would have 20 charges, essentially.
It does make you really realize that the bidding at an auction will work way different when you have to refill one of your orbs of dual dimension, if that's 20. I'll take the whole house. Right. I need to be able to travel through cracks in the wall again. The whole house.
Yep.
Package them up. Send them over.
Oh, jeez. So I did forget to put that in here, so I'll have to fix that. But basically, I went on and just added the duo dimension spell on there, and I kind of made that. I mean, again, I found a couple people homebrewed it, and I just added my own little flavor to it. So I called it a 7th level transmutation spell. Basically, a 3-dimensional target flattens into a 2-dimensional being. And while in this state, the target is able to squeeze into areas where they would otherwise not be able to fit. So through cracks in the walls, like we saw in the book, or maybe they could hide underneath or behind furniture, etc. The target is not able to attack or cast spells while in this state. The target is able to orient themselves. Like if they stand sideways, they can.
Oh, okay.
They can be invisible to other creatures. But while they are visible, they are vulnerable to attacks, taking 2 times the damage on a successful attack. So similar to a critical hit.
No depth.
Well, I just figured that they're like paper at that point, right?
Right.
So,
no, that's the joke. Is there's 2 dimensions, so they have width and height. They've got no depth.
No depth. So aside from using this spell to fit through a crack in a wall, I couldn't, and hiding under furniture was my example, but what would be another use for this spell? Because again,
yep, I was waiting for this.
I love situations. I love magical items where they have just a quirky use rather than it does 2d6 damage. It has an interesting use. Where else could this be used? Where could you see this be used, Jeff?
Well, for me, I think thieves everywhere would salivate with the ability to never get locked out of a room again. Look, you put the coolest magical ward on it. If it's not an airtight door, I'm going to flat myself 2 dimensions. It slide under, right?
Right into that vault.
You could hide yourself well under a doormat, under a tile. You just slide up under there because you can orient yourself. So you shimmy a little.
Yep.
Personally, I'd use it on the royal pantry and eat all of the best sweets. But think about it like this. If I need to travel somewhere for free and there's a mail system, right, I could just put myself in an envelope, throw myself into the thing, and they deliver me for a fraction of the cost it would, to go into the air, right? But beyond that, me and you were on top of a mountain and we're getting chased by a horde of people, and you're like, Jeff, there's a cliff. What are we going to do? And I'm like, Justin, give me a rope. And I tie a rope from my feet to my hands, and I suddenly go into the 2-dimensional thing. Well, you can orient me above you, hang onto the rope, jump off the cliff, and I'm a parachute. You can hang glide on a two-dimensional Jeffrey as we both go to safety.
I was afraid you were going to say that. I was like, oh man, you're going to like turn into paper, have them fold you into a paper airplane, and launch you off.
Yep. Like, in fact, if I had to get over a wall, I could flatten myself into a two-dimensional thing, and you could frisbee yeet me over the wall.
So
I don't know if I'd still take fall damage in the same way, though. Do I still have the same weight?
no,
I
well,
would
I mean,
narrowly have?
no, I mean, I imagine like, man, I'm a sucker for old video games, like retro video games. Paper
That's fair.
Mario on the
Yep.
Nintendo 64, one of my favorite games of all time. And toward the beginning of that game, as Paper Mario, you do fall from a high area and you go woo woo,
Yep.
like you go floating back and forth like a piece of paper. I would imagine that's what would happen with you as well, like in this form.
Those are just some of the ideas that I came up with off the top of my head. People, if you are listening here at home, at the gym, at work, I don't know, anywhere you're actually randomly listening to us, shoot us that email over at drizztdoneright@gmail.com. Go into the Discord, join the dim light. Let everybody know. How would you use a two-dimensional spell in your party? Would you use it to get away from people? Would you use yourself as an invisibility cloak? I mean, you wouldn't really be invisible, but you
Yeah,
could
that's
wrap yourself around somebody and it would look really weird.
That would look very weird.
Yeah, in fact, I would then try to argue that I was making faces and trying to intimidate at the same time.
No, that's a
in
good
that.
call.
So, maybe I'd get an advantage to intimidation because who wants to see a giant snarling face that's wrapped around? So, there's just ways to play it, people. If you have any cool, innovative ways, shoot them at us.
Yeah, let us hear them. Cool. Jeffrey, what do you have for us this week?
Well, I've got the seeing spell. So when the little creature decided to put her face up against the wall, she cast seeing spell.
Right, that's right.
For me, it's just one of those moments where you completely look over what's happening in the chapter. Like, I'm glad you went first because I had no idea about the orb. That's so cool. Like I was telling you before we started, I was like, man, up until the end when I was rereading, putting my notes together, I didn't realize they used the orb to get through the wall. I thought I had the spell. No, I had the spell that lets her see the sunlight on the top. So I decided to jump on that same moment, but from a little bit of a different angle. The thought of that cleric of Lolth putting her face up against the cracks in the wall, almost like a bloodhound looking for a scent, was creepy.
Yeah.
So naturally, I wanted to delve into what she was doing with her face pressed against the crack. I'm guessing it was trying to feel like an imperceptible draft of surface air through the crack, maybe? Like, so when she found what she was looking for, she stopped, cast a spell,
Oh, could be, yeah.
letting him know that it was daylight on the other side. You can feel the air, like maybe it's a little thinner there so she can, reach through it kind of deal.
Right.
Like, how cool is that? It's like a submarine putting up its periscope and looking around to see if it's safe to come up.
Right.
So naturally, I wanted to find out what was going on. So, sometimes we come across things that don't fit with one another exactly in the book and D&D. And, that might be what we have happening here because the closest thing that I could find is true seeing.
Okay.
Simply put, this spell allows the creature you cast it on to see things as they actually are. For the duration, you can see things like secret doors hidden by magic, and you can see into the ethereal plane. Now, an interesting note, right? So I did a little research into it, and it told me that this would work in the dark as well as the light. So whether you're inside or outside, doesn't really matter. It seemed like an arbitrary line, but luckily, folks in Reddit threads were lighting up the discussion boards, and it's speculated that true seeing would allow you to see through cast darkness, which is the innate spell of the Drow.
Right.
Because if you can see a door that's hidden by magic, well, if I cast darkness, which is magic, and it's used to obscure, well, then I'd be able to see through that, right?
Right. I would think so.
So, in essence, if True Sight allows you to see, I said I never considered this until I was knee deep in the rabbit hole, but if True Sight allows you to see things true nature, well, it allowed you to see through the magical guise. Then it is definitely argued, at least by the Reddit horde, that you can see True Sight would then give you a huge advantage in a fight inside a globe of darkness.
Yeah.
So like I said, there's definitely a healthy debate whether or not it would work. So for those veterans of the D&D campaigns out there, grizzled roleplay warriors from the days gone by, if you want to clarify whether or not that would work on Cast Darkness, hit us up in the Discord. Send us an email. One of the things that I've always loved about D&D is the ability to sit down and argue the finer points. Right?
Yeah.
To argue for your ability to bend the rules. I mean, ultimately, the DM is in charge. What they say goes. Sometimes this can be limiting if your DM isn't flexible, but I've always loved having the ability to try and roll persuasion in real life and see how it works.
Well, yeah.
Side note, when I say argue, I mean to engage in a healthy dialogue, guys.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
When it comes to sitting down with your adventure group, the only hate you should let out is at poor dice rolls.
I like that. That's good.
I'd love to hear from you guys about what you've argued from your DM and succeeded at. Like, did you charm a large beastie? Were you able to rob the party because you're a cheeky rogue? What type of innovations have you all had in gameplay? If you send us some examples, we'll definitely break it down in a future episode because I love that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so I get a little off track, so let's try to find our bearings in the dungeon and work our way on out, right? True Seeing is a 6th level divination spell. The casting range is touch. This means that you're going to have to physically lay hands on a creature in order to cast it. So if you're casting it on yourself, this is where I highly recommend checking out the YouTube, guys. This is where you can throw out some interpretive dance moves in the roleplay and then cast it on yourself. Maybe your DM watches that and gets you the bonus initiative or not the bonus initiative.
The inspiration.
Inspiration.
Yep.
Because you just broke it down in such a funky manner. Now, the creature that you touch must be willing. You can't open the minds of the unwilling. I got to say, when I put that down in my notes, I kept trying to put so many jokes after it. Can't open the minds of the unwilling. But yeah, no, I'm just going to leave it just like that because it made me chuckle.
Yeah.
The components of the ointment, the components are ointment for the eyes that cost 25 gold pieces. I almost said something weird like grand something or another. They're horrible. It's made from mushroom powder, saffron, and fat. This goes back, automatically made me think of the herbal thing that we just went into, the herb lore. And I was like, man, it's right, because, it says 25 gold. You don't need that. You get yourself some mushrooms from the grove, a little fat from, I don't know, maybe the elf that you made the ashes out of. You don't just burn that, keep some fat. And then all you need to do is find yourself just a touch of saffron, and you've got yourself an ointment that allows you true seeing. The spell will consume it, and the duration is going to last 1 hour. This spell can be used by, cast by a bard, cleric, sorcerer, warlock, or wizard. And I have a little stat block that I clipped out and put together, so I'll also put that together in there. Not going to go through that because basically the stat block is everything I just read you guys.
Exactly.
That's my dungeon delve.
Nice. Oh, man. Jeffrey.
Yep.
I think we're at the end of episode 20.
2/3 of the way through.
That's going to do it for this episode. Thank
66%
you, everyone.
of the way in.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure to give us a rating, hit those subscribe or notification buttons, or leave us a comment if you're on the YouTube. Let us know, if you don't know what else to say, let us know that you're reading along with us. Let us know what your dim lights are. Yeah, say hi. And let us know what your dim lights are for the week. Hey, if you don't have time to read, get a copy of the audiobook. I know that there's a bunch on Spotify of people that are just reading it. Like, have at it. It's free. Listen to it instead. When you've read or listened to the next chapter, shoot us an email at drizztdoneright@gmail.com, or you can log on to our Discord and get in on that ongoing discussion. We would love to hear from you.
And if you guys are the kind of people who have several different passwords that you're not paying for currently, maybe you use your parents' Netflix, your cousin's Amazon, and your friend's Hulu, don't worry, come on into the Discord. We have our very own Short Bus Zombie. He did a reading of this book. You can find it online for free. So if you don't have the book and you don't want to pay for the audiobook, come on in, join us. Find our friends in the Dim Light Squad. They've got you covered. The beautiful thing about doing the podcast is that we never really have to say goodbye, right? I mean, every time you press play, boom, we're right there.
There we are.
It's almost as if we're just hanging out in the ether, just waiting on you to invite us into your living room, your car, your headphones. You could put this show on loop, and we would never have to say goodbye.
Right.
Nope. You know what? That's a little creepy. Like, are we trapped in here?
Jeffrey,
get
us out!
Has our consciousness been secretly downloaded into the cloud? Well, tune in next week to find out. As a reminder, we got the link that says support the podcast. It's in the episode description. It's all donation-based.
All donations.
Straight to the show so we can keep bringing you quality content straight to your ear holes. Support doesn't have to just be cash. Justin mentioned earlier, you can leave reviews wherever you listen. You can like and follow the show. We have the Facebook, we have the Instagram. You can subscribe on Spotify or many of the other platforms that you find us on. Maybe Pocket Casts, for instance, that makes up 7% of our streaming audience.
What? 7%?
You can always tell a friend, tell your family. Help your country pass Canada for the silver medal in the Drizzt Done Right Listener Olympics. Well, until the next time you click play, farewell. Play fair. Be well.